singe ich ein Lied für dich von 99 Luftballons auf ihrem Weg zum Horizont. Denkst du vielleicht grad an mich? Dann singe ich ein Lied für dich von 99 Luftballons und dass sowas von sowas kommt.
Hey, it's Soleil, and this is episode 657 of the Orange Pill Investor. And today I want to talk very briefly about the Sailor article. And I know I say briefly all the time and then rant for fucking 30 minutes, but I really mean it this time. I wrote a whole ass rebuttal, 110 points. I still have to write up the preamble or whatever, and I'll post it. I considered going point by point, like read his point, read my rebuttal, read his point, read my rebuttal. But I literally would probably just be here for 2 fucking hours. Even if I just read it with like no embellishments, and there's no way in hell I would be able to resist embellishing. I've just got a microphone and no one's gonna stop me from talking. So I'll just keep doing it. So the only thing that I'm really gonna say about this, and the title of the song I just thought was funny. There's no significance other than 110 reasons, and it just reminded me of 99 red balloons. And I can't remember if it was just a joke or if there's an actual song called 99 Dead Baboons. But anyway, I just thought it was funny this way. So mostly just having fun with that one. My mind is absolutely fucking just glazed over. It took me like an hour to get to 20, and I wasn't even doing that much research. I was just kind of like just replying because I've been covering it so much. I kind of had what I thought were a lot of the answers. But then after about an hour, I got to 20 and I was just like, oh my God, my fucking brain's about to explode. So then it started getting into the weeds and the technicals, and I don't have Sailor to ask, like, well, explain this more. What do you mean by this? And so I had to start asking AI. I'm just like pasting his point in to see what the fuck he's talking about more clearly. Or, I'm asking an AI hallucination to hallucinate what they think Michael Saylor means by this. Best you can do when you don't have the actual person to prompt for some follow-up. But I did that like one question at a time until I got to like 50. That was like another 2 hours at least. And then I just finished 110, and I don't know, there was at least another probably 3 hours that it took me to get through, maybe even more, because then, so I could have done, so a lot of people were slamming Sailor for using generating this with AI, which is probably true. And then some people were clowning on Fred Krueger for using AI to post, a response using AI. And then there's people defending AI, and it's like AI's okay here, but it's not okay here when somebody you don't like does it. And so I tried to be pretty careful not to just let it be, I could have just said, here, give me a rebuttal to each of these points and posted that. So I tried for it to not be that. Um, so I used AI to explain to me in more detail than this little, 2 sentences for each point, like what he's talking about. And then at the end, and so then I created my own answers, my own rebuttals. I didn't ask AI to give me the rebuttal. And then at the very end, I was like, okay, I just pasted my whole thing in there and said, check for errors. Um, and then it actually evaluated some of my tone, which you can imagine sometimes I'm prone to sarcasm and um, scoring points if it's fun or amusing to me. And some of the some of my language was a bit unserious or whatever. And so I was like, all right, I'll clean some of this shit up. And I got rid of some of my more provocative takes that would have really just been appealing to the BIP 110ers and like rah rah cheerleading kind of shit. Like, yeah, that'll show them. But really not doing anything more than just aggravating the anti BIP 110 folks. So, as fun as some of it was, um, and I had a couple of little subtle, I don't know if they're Easter eggs or whatever, but, because Lynn Alden's been weighing in on the debate. And then there was one about, why activate at a certain block height instead of when the miners actually signal for participation, something like that. And I was like, well, nothing stops this train, choo choo. And I was like, all right, I probably should take this stuff out of here. So it's going to be a lot more boring, but probably a little bit more substantive. But it it was excruciatingly painful to go through this one by one, and that was probably the point, because one of the things that people do, I think it's called laundry list argumentation. Can't remember who said it, but I saw this in somebody's video recently, and you just flood them with more information than they can counter, or you just make it extremely difficult to mount a defense because they have to counter each one of these. And it's kind of funny because this is kind of spammy, right? This is asking AI, this is putting no effort into this, and having AI spam your opponents with 110 things and then challenging them to rebut them. So then I'm stuck either taking the easy way out and asking AI to rebut them, or I have to take time out of my life that I'll never get back and rebut them piecemeal like I did. So I'm probably the idiot in this situation, but I am reminded of one of the quotes that I actually used in the rebuttal, which was a Bastiat quote, which says, when does legal plunder stop? It stops when the plunder is more painful than labor, or something along those lines. And basically it means when men stop fighting, rent seeking, parasitism, moral hazard, plunder thrives. It's probably the whole fourth turning theory, right? Was it strong men create good times, good times create weak men create hard times create strong men. And so every time we get into that cycle of when people stop fighting against cheaters, basically, optimal game theory is to cheat if you can get away with it. So you have to be vigilant. And so I decided to just suck it up and put in the effort. But I did finally get to a point where I was just like, look, there's 5 or 10 of these in a row that could have all just been 1 point, but obviously they have to be put into multiple points because he has to get to 110. So like, you know, 10 numbers in a row that are all about Taproot, like that could just have been 1 point. But now I'm refuting 10 different fucking points that are all the same. And so I started kind of getting a little bit shorthand and worn out and worn to a frazzle. And the annoyed tone was coming out in my responses. They were getting shorter and more flippant and less serious. And so I went back and I cleaned up all that shit. And yeah, I'll probably post that later when I formalize the preamble to it. So, what's up, Sandeep? In my first week post retirement as a full time trader like you, dude, congratulations. That is amazing. Um, you did it at the perfect time because Bitcoin is at the bottom, and or it's at least in deep value. So for the next couple of years, if we can get past the spam war and we can get into a bull market, you should be able to fucking just bank. Your portfolio should grow as opposed to me. I retired in December 2024, right after the fucking, uh, just the elation and like, oh shit, I got all this money and I'm gonna be the richest person on the planet. And then a year and a half later, I'm like, holy shit, my portfolio was up 9x and now it's down 80% from being up 9x, which basically brings me back to right where I started. It's like probably early 2024. Probably a little bit of a head, but of course, I've been spending money hand over fist as well. It's not like I retired and then started spending less money. So, uh, portfolio went into the shitter, and I started spending more money, which is a bad combination. So, you are positioned to do much better than I did in my first couple of years being retired. So, couldn't be any happier for you and to hear it. And wish you all the success in the world. What's up, Pete? Let's see. Good evening from Hungary. Hope you're having a good vacation, or I don't know if this is business. Let's see. Touching grass out here. Question: if you are anti-BIP 110, does that mean their campaign is convincing nodes to not signal BIP 110 as the tide turns? That's a bad look. Yeah. Um, but there, I guess I'm going to call it spamnesia. But there's a phenomenon that seems to have happened with the block size war, in that people forgot that it was contentious, and people forgot that the nodes basically strong armed the miners into capitulation. And people act like it was like, oh no, this was like everybody everybody activated this you know with not nearly as much contention as in the spam war. um, and so it's revisionist history. And I'm sure the same thing will happen with the spam war, right? As soon as a miner flips the bit and then there's a cascade of other miners, they'll just take credit for activating it, right? It'll just be like, oh, this went well. And, what was it? The Simpsons, the Simpsons kid, it's like, I'm helping. I'm sure it'll be like that. And in 10 years from now, nobody will remember that that the BIP 110 folks were told that they were going to be forked off and all kinds of other shit, and that the miners will just ignore them. Now, if that doesn't happen, maybe everybody does remember it, and maybe I get reminded that every time I go to a Bitcoin meetup or something. Well, weren't you the guy that was the idiot that was on the BIP 110 side? But yeah, it is going to be a weird thing where what's it what's it going to be like for the losers after this war? Because They're everyone is confident about their prediction. And so half of the people are going to be confidently wrong. I hope I'm not going to be the one of the ones that ends up being confidently wrong. But if I am, I think I'll be able to sleep fine. I'm not going to apologize for it. Um, I think Bitcoin probably needs everyone to be all in on whatever they think. And then the network either agrees or disagrees. And then you align yourself with the new reality. So, um, but there's going to probably be a lot of receipts saved. Um, and to a certain extent, if you're just taking a side, it's probably that your favorite influencer was on that side. Um, you really shouldn't have appeals to authority, and there's even a specialized Bitcoin one called appeals to, appeal to Satoshi, right? People are like, oh well, what would Satoshi do? Or Satoshi wrote this and Satoshi wrote that. But the reverse is also kind of true. You don't necessarily want to appeal to the opposite of the people that you don't like. But I did gratuitously post something the other day. It was like the real MVPs of the spam war or of BIP 110 are the notorious shitcoiners coming out against it because Craig Wright came out against BIP 110. He's like the most famous villain in Bitcoin. He impersonated Satoshi. He put Hodlonaut through hell in court, suing people for whatever it is, slander or libel or whatever the legal term is, for damaging someone's reputation. And then the courts actually ruled that he's not Satoshi. As far as I know, he never demonstrated the ability to move any of Satoshi's coins, which would have been a pretty easy thing to do if you were Satoshi. Um, but it's such an easy dunk. It's like, ha ha, you're on the side of, the shittiest Bitcoiners. Peter Todd, Jameson Lopp, David Bailey. But then when like Superstar Sailor defects and goes anti-BIP 110, the crowd just goes wild and is like, oh, end of the BIP 110 debate, Sailors against it. Uh, you know, that's the end of the debate. 110 reasons. Uh, and the last thing that I'll say on this is that if you were from another planet or whatever and you just landed here and you started reading these, you'd be like, oh wow, that's some pretty pretty good points here. But if you are reading this under the context of Hodlonaut's research and you've watched Core become a monopoly and starting to become what looks like an empire in decline, right? They're not listening to the nodes. They are banning people from uh, the forums and and recruiting and giving grants to devs from companies, and then the people who are linked to those companies are the devs that are mentoring them and developing the code. And by some coincidence, those devs that were recruited and groomed end up being the authors of V30. And, I almost kind of feel sorry for Gloria Zhao because I don't know if she's a useful idiot or they intended for her to take the fall and to just take all the arrows and then she could, be drummed out of the community. Um, I mean, she said she was never a Bitcoiner in the first place and wasn't all that interested, so maybe I shouldn't feel sorry for her. She wanted to go work for Google, so she still can. I'm sure she can. I'm sure she had a soft landing. But if you're looking at it with that perspective and you're like, oh, well, Bitcoin is under attack, and what would an attack look like? And then you look at what happened with SegWit, Taproot, Inscriptions Hack, and Core v30, and you're like, oh, well, that's what an attack would look like. And maybe that's a small attack. Maybe it's not existential by itself. But what else would you do? You'd have to boil the frogs, because if you 51% attack the network, everybody knows that that's going to fail because of the incentives of the network. But if you boil the frog slowly and you don't know you're being attacked, then you could centralize ownership of the coins, like with Strategy and the ETFs and BlackRock and all of these things, which by itself would be fine, because I was sold on the Bitcoin that nobody's stack meant more than my stack, because I could run a node and I can run a miner. But if the devs are being infiltrated and co-opted, and there's centralization in the coins, and the nodes are all running 90% are running core, and there's mining centralization problems because 6 mining pools control 95% of the hash power, then you've got centralization problems in every in every area of Bitcoin, and it starts to become a very viable threat. And that, to me, that answers a lot of these questions that he has in here about urgency. He's like, you have to demonstrate the case for urgency. Like, we don't, why be so urgent? Why be so, and I mean, this wasn't rushed, and it wasn't, it was urgent, but it wasn't rushed. And if you take Bitcoin as a whole in context, then the threat to the nodes, the threat to the devs, the threat to the mining centralization, and the threat to large honeypots of Bitcoin and paper Bitcoin all combine to what would amount to a credible attack. If I was going to mount a credible attack, that sounds like something that the way that I might try to do it. And so you can read these 110 reasons with that context and with that belief that Bitcoin, the control system is trying to kill Bitcoin, or if it can't kill it, at least co-opt it and just control it. Or you can just read it with what I would call the naive belief that Bitcoin has already won, and the rest of us can just stack sats and chill and never have to worry about it. And Bitcoin's just going to Bitcoin because it's fucking Superman. And it's got like this human godlike quality to it that's going to save us all from ourselves, and without us having to lift a finger. So if you read this with two different frames, then everything that he says here looks reasonable, or everything that he says here looks unreasonable. And obviously, I read it from the lens that attacks are happening. I can't confirm that this is a coordinated attack, but it damn sure looks like the kind that I would mount if I was trying to kill it. So, yeah, I think that's the last thing I'll say about it for now. Sandeep says, I am like you. Gave retirement notice 12 months ago when portfolio looked much, much better than it does now, but we will get back. I agree. What's up, dude face? It's interesting to me that Saylor opposes BIP 110 but doesn't really seem to understand it. I wonder if he is being forced to make a statement. And so that's the question that I have for Strategy, Saylor, all of the Bitcoin treasury companies, every publicly traded company, as a matter of fact. Julie Millard got interviewed by Tim Kotzman back in the day. She's like a professor of marketing, and she's done some research, published a couple of papers, I believe. And it's very excellent. Back in the day, I agreed with her that Strategy was the most authentic Bitcoin treasury company. They were extremely transparent. they were very in line with Bitcoin ethos, just stack, you never sell your Bitcoin. You can borrow to buy Bitcoin, leverage play to buy Bitcoin. They had all of their stats on their website, and they're just, very public facing. They're always out there. And I thought it was an extremely good interview, and her research was very well done. And unfortunately, strategy has lost a lot of that authenticity lately, which is kind of a good thing for BIP 110 because he lost a lot of that authenticity right before he endorsed BIP or anti-BIP 110. So it's like people were already starting to do double takes on some of the things that he was saying, like, strategy turns Bitcoin into money, and uh, never sell your Bitcoin, but we're selling our Bitcoin, and I never said never sell your Bitcoin. And retweeting any Ethereum yield coin, shitcoin wrapped in stretch. um there were a lot of like things that were not strictly authentic from a Bitcoiner perspective, and so he lost a lot of his credibility right before he endorsed the spam side of the equation, which is fortunate for BIP 110 because it was like, oh yeah, all of these our spidey senses that were going off were for good reason, and now the mask is off. And so the question is, can any publicly traded company resist being co-opted and corrupted by the control system? Right? They have to follow SEC guidelines. They have to go out to the credit markets and beg for money, and whatever the credit markets demand is what the company is going to do, right? The credit markets wanted strategy to have a big cash reserve. They went out and got one. It's a melting ice cube. We accepted that dilution for accretion later. I don't know if anybody's old enough to watch Popeye. I'll glad you pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today, kind of a thing. And I was totally fine with it as well. But it does bring up the question of, can any publicly traded company, even one with a Bitcoin balance sheet, resist being co-opted? Can they remain a sovereign company that acts um, with enough sovereign decision making to, be considered Bitcoin adjacent enough to really be aligned with Bitcoin? Or once you go from private to public, you're just kind of fucked. You've subordinated yourself, and it's only a matter of time before they get you. They figure out some way to get you. They short you until you cry uncle. What, Mahler's had his company basically taken over, and now he had to resign as the CEO because he doesn't like the direction that they're going. I think he was probably one of the useful idiots that maybe figured it out just in time. So he's probably a good actor that finally figured out he was being used, and uh, he has very political explanation for it when he resigned and didn't really throw anybody under the bus. But I don't know if he even realized it, or just kind of realized that he was in over his head, and didn't really have the control that he maybe thought he would, and then just bowed to the pressure. But it's going to be interesting to see if that's possible, and if it will ever be possible. I mean, I assume that when Bitcoin cleans up the whole financial system, and every company is a Bitcoin company, like, a stock market will still probably exist. So when every company is a Bitcoin company, then maybe it's fine. Like, I don't know. But I think that's the challenge: is can you remain true to Bitcoin but still be a pseudo government entity because you're a publicly traded corporation. You're like, you get your permission from the government to run an ATM program, things like that. Is you have to follow all of these guidelines. Um, so that's going to be fun to watch. I put myself in a predicament as well because I wanted to make a principled stand for BIP 110 and not support any publicly traded companies that weren't supporting BIP 110. And unfortunately, there fucking aren't any, as far as I can tell. So I subordinated myself to the stock market because I didn't have a large enough Bitcoin stack to just, like, I had enough of a Bitcoin stack that if civil war breaks out and I got to duck out of the country with my brain wallet in my head, I won't starve. I'll be fine in some third world country somewhere. But my stack wasn't big enough to just retire and, borrow against it and pay all my bills that way, right? This drop back down to 60 would have probably wiped out my whole my whole stack with as much money as I was spending over the last year. So I have to generate profits in the market. So I've subordinated myself so that when I want to take a principled stand, I'm actually suffering quite badly. Even just not taking, selling the 1,000 shares of strategy and not gaining in and not generating, I don't know, it was like easy, like $5,000 a week of premiums on strategy. So, not owning strategy itself is costing me probably between 3 and 5 grand a week. I've mitigated that with some of the miners, but once I have to dump the miners, right around mandatory signaling, there's nothing I can really trade unless I go straight fiat. I wonder if, so yeah, Sandeep, I might be trading the SPY iron condors with you because at least I know they're not using my money to to stack sats and run a Core V30 node. Um, that would be hilarious if trading fiat stocks was more Bitcoin, was more toxic-eyed Bitcoiner than owning Bitcoin treasury companies. The whole point was I was trying to stack a portfolio of just Bitcoin treasury companies because I wanted it to be Bitcoin aligned with Bitcoin. Um, but yeah, I put myself in a bad spot by trying to hold two contradictory positions: Bitcoin treasury companies only and Bitcoin treasury companies that that are supporting BIP 110, of which there are none that I'm aware. What's up, Proton? Don't think I've seen you on True North for a while, unless I've missed one. Are you waiting to see what happens? Would be great to see you back on. As far as I know, I'll be on tonight. We didn't have a show last week. The week before, I think we had a special guest, and so we didn't want too many people on. And yeah, so as far as I know, we'll probably be doing an update on BIP 110 tonight. Um, I haven't seen the official agenda, but we discussed it on Monday. Um, and that was on our tentative agenda. So I believe I'll be on tonight. Somebody even asked me in a comment, they're like, "Are you still on True North?" Because, when I came out and sold all my Strive positions and was pretty vocal about it, uh, replying to Matt Cole's tweet, people, somebody was like, "Are you still on True North?" And I was like, "As far as I know, what have you heard? And you know something I don't." Um, so yeah, I should be on. Craig Wright, LOL, forgot about that. Yeah, British British fucking hodl came out against BIP 110. It's just like I know you're not supposed to appeal to authority and then like appeal to the like anti-appeal to authority, but it's so easy to dunk. It's so easy. I know people don't like the smear tactics. Um and I think I've largely avoided them. I still refer to Adam as Andy. Um that's probably a smear, so that's probably unkind. But it's what are you gonna do? Sandeep said sold 743 puts for 25 cents this morning. Trying to buy them back for 2 cents now. Good day. Congrats, brother. For all the wide spy put spread to be clear. 743, 739. Nice. All right, we're all caught up on the chats. Let's see what I need to do with myself. I've reduced like I'm sure Tesla and SpaceX's Bitcoin are on Coinbase or something. I'm sure they're running Core V30. Um, I did hedge out most of my Tesla position, but then the call credit spreads that I put on, I bought them back for half, and so now they're not on there. So I'm slightly bullish because I have some positive delta. Let's see this block iron condor. Wow, this actually went. Huh. I thought the price going down a couple of bucks would help me, but it didn't really move the needle. So this is not, Theta is not doing jack shit because I'm still smack in between um, my inside strikes, right? I'm above 72.50, I'm below 85. And I think I was at like 80 yesterday or the day before. And this thing is just not going down in value. I mean, it's been 12 days. I feel like this should have come down in price a little bit. Um, I'm glad I didn't put on 5 or 10 of these damn things. All right, Wolf sold the 20s. Still plenty of extrinsic in these bad boys. At least they're slightly out of the money still. Oh, I did put on some call credit spreads. Those are just chilling. Yeah, so I hedged out. Yeah, I didn't really hedge out much at all. I'm still long 400 delta. So yeah, I don't know. When we get to mandatory signaling, that'll last a couple of weeks. Like, what do? I just go sit in cash or hedge out what I can. SpaceX. I can't remember if I had any call credit spreads on these bad boys. I wouldn't mind unassing myself from one of these positions too. As early investors begin to unlock, this could just start unwinding. What's the expected move for 37 days? Yeah, expected move. I mean, this could go to 100 easy, which would be unfortunate for my portfolio. All right, so these have been on for 2 weeks. I could sell these and keep 36 cents. That would be 18 cents a week. It's not quite 1% a week. I can let these cook a little bit more. Strategy, I've shorted this bad boy out to the max. And I think I shorted this when the price was around 90, 95. And so I have kind of like almost kind of like dollar cost averaged into this a little bit. So my average credit is 124. I could technically buy them back for 112 and keep the, 12 cents per contract. But wait, why am I trying to buy it back for 62? No, no, no. Cancel. That wasn't the deal. I'm trying to close this actually for a credit as well. Oops. What did I get paid? I got paid $1.24. So if I close it, for maybe a buck. Let's try that again. See if this looks right. Yeah. For some reason I don't know. I forgot to change that to credit instead of a debit. Strategy would probably have to stay under, let's see, I got paid 270 on the call credit spread. So the most I can make there is 270, and I paid basically a buck 50 here. So if this doesn't trade lower, 270 minus a buck 50, I could make like at the most $1.20 if this doesn't go down. If I lose all of the put debit spread that I bought, I'd lose a buck 50. Oh, yeah, a buck 50. And as long as it stays under 110, I'd make the full 270. So worst case scenario, if it stays under 110, I keep that buck 20. But I would have to pay whatever. I would actually, it would basically be a break even. I would close this for basically nothing, probably for a penny or something. But I'm guessing the price does go back down and I'll be able to close this for a little bit more profit. That's the goal. But again, a very small position. I like defined risk trades in the sense that they're manageable. They're not infinite risk, but at the same time, they're win or lose, which I don't like. I prefer to own shares so that there's no expiration date and I can just run the wheel indefinitely. So spreads, I do try to keep a way much smaller part of the portfolio. Irons basically break even. CLSK, I only kept one of these positions just to keep an eye on CLSK. So if this dumps back down to $12 a share or something, I'll add some more cash secured puts back on. Or since these expire, a lot of these expire on August 21st, maybe I just let them roll off. Close them first week of August. This one's got 16 days left. It's still got a buck 12 of extrinsic value, 2.5 weeks. So 40 bucks a week. Yeah, I can collect 2% of the underlying price just keeping these on. So even though I could buy this back in pocket, the 60 bucks, there's plenty of extrinsic left in these. And I've trimmed so much of this position. My theta here is getting uncomfortably small. Same here. It's been on for 2 weeks and I could keep 40%, but I'll leave those on and let them cook a little bit longer. The IRA. I've got dry powder to spend as well. Maybe I'll put, but I want something to move before I put something into it, right? If the price goes way up, I'll put a call credit spread on. If the price goes way down, I'll put a put credit spread on. And nothing really like major is happening. I mean, this is kind of down, but the more put credit spreads I put on, that's just me going longer. I'm going to be adding delta. And if I'm trying to be delta neutral up until the spam war, then I need to be putting call credit spreads on, and none of these are up, except iron. Maybe I'll put something on for iron. Well, but iron's only up since the 17th. Yeah, maybe that'll be a good one. Let's. Oh, but you know what? I think I looked at these and the credit spreads weren't paying that much, so it kind of turned me off. It's not great, and that's $1,000 a pop. Maybe I'll just put one on. I'll put one on for the hell of it. All right, let's close it. 50% profit. Yeah, I have enough buying power to put like 5 more of those on, but I really would rather not. So I'm sitting in cash. What a fucking disaster. All right. Wolf, I've got a bit of dry powder as well because I've been taking off these positions as they've recovered. Plenty of extrinsic value there to collect. Same with iron. Same with Cypher. Strive is hedged out. Strategy is hedged out. All right, whole lot of nothing. The 5K account. The iron 41 call. So probably getting, oh, it's not too bad. My average cost on my iron, I got assigned at like 42, but I got paid 250, so my cost basis is actually 39.50. So I sold the 41. So if I get called away at 41, I get to keep what? $1.50 in call away value from 39.50 to 41 plus the premium that I got paid. So I got paid $2 here. So I'd keep the $1.50 and the 223, so that 370. So I'd basically make $370 if I get called away at 41. So that would just be fine by me. $20 put, plenty of time, plenty of extrinsic value. I won't be doing much of anything here either. All right, that is it. I think that's a bit of a short one, but I think that'll do it for now. I'll put together that 110 reasons, get it all dressed up pretty, or not necessarily pretty, but I'll figure out what I want to say beforehand. Probably mention the Hodlonaut article and kind of prepare the reader. There's no way in hell anybody reads the list with any kind of detail. I'm probably only one of the only people to actually read Sailor's list in in detail. Plenty of people were happy to fucking repost it though and dunk like, oh, that's it, it's over. It's over for BIP 110. Sailor has spoken. 110 reasons. They must all be good. But probably didn't read or understand most of it. So, if people can't be bothered to read somebody with 5 million followers is fucking 110 reasons. Ain't nobody gonna read mine with any kind of precision. I wouldn't. I wouldn't read it if I wasn't me. But anyway, it got done.